We must include this into the movie when the federals were chasing me.
He's not French.
Belgian, French, all the same.
He's not Belgian.
They all sound the same. Frank is Belgian.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Chat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash OK USA Lynn.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, to hang out with us live, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatpod.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, tonight, we're all going to go AWOL. We're going to fly to China. We're going to get oiled up. We're going to get ready to show what we're made of and to honor our sensei as we enter the Kumite for one of our great listeners, Adam from Texas. And he wanted us to review the 1988 martial arts action classic, Bloodsport.
All right, well, and Adam wrote in and said, hello, Shat crew. I love what y'all do, and I can't wait to listen every week and explore movies I haven't seen before. I commissioned Bloodsport because it's one of my all-time favorite films with nostalgia glasses on, and can't wait to hear y'all Shat all over it. My parents got divorced when I was very young, and I would go to Arkansas to visit my dad during the summer break from school. He was a long-haul trucker going all over the U.S., and I would go with him sometimes. And it was tradition, when the trip was done, we would go to Big Flat, which had the nearest liquor store 45 minutes away. And then on the way back, stop at the gas station near the house and rent some VHS movies. If it was a really good trip, we might rent a SNES or Sega console and some games for a couple days. But back to Bloodsport. You've already reviewed a lot of the films we would rent, but Jean-Claude Van Damme seems to have been left out a lot. Later on, many years later, I found out that the story is all bullshit. But at the time, it inspired me to stretch, while Arnold inspired me to work out. I still have my VHS copy and own a DVD copy, and I also own a dual-sided Blu-ray copy of Time Cop and Bloodsport. Do your worst, but give the soundtrack a chance, because it's great workout jams. Thank y'all very much. Adam from Texas.
I think Adam brings up a good point. When you went to the video store, you had to watch the film, regardless of it being good, bad, whatever. Today, if something doesn't catch you within the first 5 minutes, you just click off of it. So I think maybe today people watch less bad movies than back in the 80s and the 90s when you're almost forced to.
I think on the flip side, though, there were gatekeepers back then. Like a movie had to be somewhat okay to make it to your screen. Whereas now, like with streaming, anything can get out there. The part that Adam pointed out that really struck a chord with me was how happy we were with how little we had. Because I remember when you could rent a console for like 2 days and you would play that shit 24 hours a day. You wouldn't sleep, you wouldn't eat, you would just play your ass off. And now I'm like, I got an Xbox and I got a gaming PC and there's a Nintendo Switch in the other room. Like we got way too much to keep us busy now.
Agreed.
Well, Bloodsport is a 1988 martial arts film starring Jean-Claude Van Damme and Forrest Whitaker. The film centers on Frank Dux, played by Van Damme, a United States Army captain and ninjutsu practitioner who competes in an underground full-contact martial arts tournament called the Kumite in Hong Kong. It was one of Van Damme's first starring films and showcases athletic abilities, launching his career as a mainstream action star. The screenplay is based on Dukes' claims first covered in the November 1980 issue of Black Belt magazine. The real Frank Dux served as the film's action choreographer and technical advisor. After its release, many of Dux' claims were disputed. Despite mixed reviews from critics, Bloodsport was a considerable box office success, grossing $50 million on a budget of about $2 million. It developed a strong cult following and has been cited as an influence on the development of mixed martial arts. Bloodsport spawned 3 direct-to-video sequels. So Big D, Ash, we always ask where you were and what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Tonight, it is Bloodsport. Big D, we'll start with you.
I've already professed my love for like zombie flicks, disaster flicks, military, fuck yeah, America flicks. But when I was 10, there was nothing bigger to me than ninjas. I loved the ninja movies. Top 4, just to go quick, Revenge of the Ninja, Ninja 3, The Domination, where the spirit of a ninja possesses that female cop. That's a great one. Enter the Ninja or American Ninja. Loved these things. Loved them so much that our town had like a weapon shop. You know, the standard one that sells swords and knives. And it's basically today's smoke shop before you could actually be a smoke shop. Like they would have a couple pipes and stuff there. And they had stuff. I would just go in there and stare at it. They had of course, they had some throwing stars, katanas, and they had these also climbing spikes for your hands and feet. It was my dream. I spent the entire summer cutting grass, finally got enough money to get these hooks. But sadly, I was too fat to climb trees. I tried to do it, and it did not work. I couldn't get the ninja star to stick in the tree. It was really, really pathetic. So by the time that Bloodsport came out, I think my dreams had been crushed about being some kind of stealthy fat ninja, looking like Chris Farley in the 90s movie. But Bloodsport, for many years, I didn't see it. And when I did see it, I don't really remember what I thought of it. But going back today, this is one of those films, Adam, thank you very much, because this is a must-see for any 80s or 90s film review podcast.
Yeah, I'm randomly like an actually huge fan of Jean-Claude Van Damme. I think it may be in part because I was a dancer and his kicks are so pretty. Like when he holds his little kicks, like he's got these beautiful lines. And I also think he's really immensely charming. He's ridiculous, but he's really charming. And this movie is one of my favorites from my childhood. I saw this for the first time when I was like, 8 years old, and my dad would watch it all the time. And I also don't think it'll surprise either of you that I really love it due to its connection with Mortal Kombat, which we're going to get into. So for this one, Adam, I was really excited for you to commission it.
I don't know if you guys experienced this in your childhood, but when I was a kid, Persians do mehmuni, which is basically like a party at like a relative's house, but it doesn't have to be for like a particular occasion. Like it's just like a get together, but all the families show up. Our mehmunis always followed this certain pattern. My mom, we would get dressed up, we would go there. All the kids would go play in a room while like the adults were in the living room hanging out, drinking tea or whatever. We would start out playing nice. I would get mad at some kid. I would kick him in the chest or like throw them into a closet door. The kid would start crying, and then my mom would have to come and get me, drag me out. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry, because she left so many parties in tears because her kid kicked the shit out of some other kid for no good reason. There was one kid. His name was Reza Sharifi. And he was like my most frequent beatdown customer. I love to beat the shit out of this kid. This dumbass showed me Bloodsport when I was like 9 years old. I had already beaten him up a couple times. For the next 2 or 3 years after I saw Bloodsport, every time we had a family party, it was a Kumite. I was Frank Dux, and I would just beat the shit out of every kid. And again, I'm not saying like I'm a badass here. I was like twice the size of all the other children.
Oh my God.
Oh, this poor kid. You're definitely on his Billy Madison list. You have to be.
Reza Sharifi. I think he lives in like Seattle now, right now. If you're listening, dude, I'm sorry.
Poor guy.
Not cool on my part. Anyway, in honor of Reza Sharifi, let's hit the trailer.
For centuries, the Society of the Black Dragon has sanctioned an ancient rite of combat, known as the Kumite. Open only to the world's most lethal warriors. It has never been won by a Westerner.
You are not Japanese. I can do it.
Now, for the first time, the true story of America's super agent, Frank Dux, can be revealed.
Uncle Sam can't afford to let you get hurt.
I'm going to Hong Kong.
Frank is going to fight in the Kumite, and we're here to stop him.
An awesome human weapon.
It hurts me just looking at it.
Who infiltrates the Chinese underworld.
I did not come this far to stop now.
Take it.
To enter a forbidden competition.
Couldn't you just get me in?
Strict rules, no press.
You telling me you never break rules?
where every fighting style, every worthy opponent, every deadly technique clash in savage combat.
Time to separate the men from the boys.
And only one will triumph.
Now I break you.
International martial arts sensation Jean-Claude Van Damme in Bloodsport, the true story of the ultimate champion.
Kumite, Kumite, Kumite.
U.S. Army Captain Frank Dux is trained in the ways of ninjutsu under his sensei Senzo Tanaka. As a boy, Dux and a group of his friends broke into Tanaka's home to steal a katana, but Dux was apprehended while returning the katana to its place. Impressed by Dux's integrity and toughness, Senzo decides to train him alongside his son Shingo. After Shingo's death, Senzo trains Dux as a member of the Tanaka clan. Dux is invited to the Kumite, an illegal martial arts tournament in Hong Kong. After his army superiors refuse to let him go, Frank goes absent without leave, says goodbye to his sensei, and leaves for Hong Kong. 2 Criminal Investigation Command agents, Helmer and Rollins, are assigned to track down and arrest Dux.
So just like any self-respecting 80s action flick, we get some epic montages. And the first montage that starts you off right out of the chute, we get Bolo. He's breaking these giant ice cubes. You get some guys kicking these really thick, like balsa wood, like planks. They're supposed to look like solid wood, but you can tell what they are. We get some black guy who's up in a tree. He's cracking coconuts. And then they go into like a really quick overview of the Kumite, how it's set up. And I realized that on other movies, I've hated it. Mortal Kombat, Ash, you already talked about it. I was harsh on that because I wanted the rules. I wanted to understand what was going on. But here, the fighters got me so into it. I was just curious about them. I'm immediately trying to investigate. I'm intrigued by all the different fighting styles and techniques. I couldn't wait to see what they were going to do, regardless of the rules or format. So I think the problem was Mortal Kombat. I couldn't tell what's stronger than another power. Could like Sub-Zero kill Raiden? I didn't know any of that. But here, when it's hand-to-hand combat, the fighters had me totally into the movie.
I mean, I have lots to say about that last statement because I think that's like a really unfair asking me because you don't know if these guys are going to be able to like, who's going to win because you get this buffet of fighting styles at the beginning, which I, like you, loved. Like, I don't know how you could not fall in love with this movie from like the opening scene. Because think about that. While the credits are still like rolling, the title sequence, you've got ice breaking, and he doesn't just kind of break the ice, he like shatters the ice, right? You get the random dude that scales a tree, not just to scale the tree. Oh no, he's gonna randomly chop 6 different coconuts with his hand. You get the stick fighting guys. Like, you just get all these different types of fighting and these different training montages that makes all of Rocky look really stupid. And it's so good. And Jean-Claude Van Damme is a lot of fun to watch in this opening. But the extra guys, like just the randos, they're a lot more interesting because they're insane.
I'm glad you guys were entertained with this opening because I was worried. I didn't remember the beginning of this movie. And as I'm watching, I'm like, oh, fuck. You guys are acting like this is genius direction. This is fucking Captain Planet. Like, let's go to Africa. What are they doing there? Now in China, what's going on there? He's using water. He's using fire. She's using earth. And the one guy's got heart in Peru or whatever. The only thing this movie managed to do in the opening montage was reveal 2 things. One is it's going to reduce everyone to a caricature. You just fight the way you come from, and that's all you do. And they're going to utterly disregard real martial arts. They just threw them right out the window.
But Jean-Claude tells you that. He explains it to you that he's trained in all the different ways because it doesn't matter what way you're trained. It only matters that you're trained in a way to win.
Except for grappling. No one grapples in this movie.
No.
It's all-inclusive is what it is, Gene. It's an all-inclusive film. Now, I will say, I'll give you something that's silly. Was anybody else cracking up during the flashback scene? Because if you've not seen this movie before, he goes over to his like sensei's house and he sees this katana sword, which is fine. And then they go to a flashback, and it's to his childhood. His little punk friends have broken in. They're trying to steal the katana. They hear him coming in. And then he just kind of, Jean-Claude Van Damme's character just kind of like stands there as a child and like slowly picks up the sword and then gets very slowly kicked in the stomach. And then this flashback just goes on and on and on, which is fine. But every like 47 seconds, they leave the flashback to go to Jean-Claude Van Damme in for the present time, staring at the katana blade. And the first or second time, I'm like, okay, well, they want us to know it's still a flashback. But then the sixth time, and then the seventh time, and then the eighth and the ninth time. And I couldn't help but wonder, like, is this the same single shot of Jean-Claude? Or is it just him being shot for 12 straight minutes looking pensive and slightly sad?
Oh, but Ash, you're not even bringing up the best. The dramatic zoom in. So we can tell this is a flashback, but they have to zoom in close on his eyes. It gets blurry. I was expecting Wayne and Garth to come out and be like, diddle-oo, 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 diddle-oo.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, I hate flashback scenes, but this flashback scene paid off in so many ways because they show us young Frank. And I was worried about young Frank. I don't know what's wrong with him. I get that his mom and dad were immigrants, but he looks and sounds like he was dropped on his head from the top of Brussels town hall. He's like, why are we taking a sword? This kid has a San Francisco Giants baseball cap and a New York Giants jersey. Like, what is wrong with this child? Does he just like giant teams?
Oh, he needed a Tokyo Giant pair of sweatpants.
They give him like 10 reasons to fight in the Kumite. It's like, not only does he want to honor his sensei, but also his sensei was linked to like the atomic bomb. Oh, and Shingo died. Like, usually you only need one reason to fight in the tournament. Mortal Kombat, it honors that, right? Everyone's got a singular reason. No, Frank's got like 10 reasons he's got to be there.
And I was convinced, if you've not seen this in a while, I was convinced this was ADR. I did not think the voice matched his mouth movements. I was convinced this was just some American kid, and then they went back and dubbed over it. No, this kid's name is Pierre Raffini. So I'm going to assume that was his legitimate accent.
Wow.
So now we get into the part where Frank's going to be trained, and Senzo's son, Shingo, dies. He agrees finally reluctantly that he's going to train Frank, but his method is a bit strange. Now, we've seen some questionable martial artists or senseis and how they teach. Daniel Miyagi at first, he's treating him like a slave. We talked about it in the podcast. He's like, hey, go wax and wash my cars, paint my house, go clean up my front yard, until we get the reveal when Daniel says, I'm done with this. You're not training me. We're like, oh, wow, look, he's been using muscle memory, and all these actions Daniel's been doing are actually applied when you start to learn karate. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to give Senzo a chance here. Maybe there's something he's doing. Catching the goldfish, okay. Maybe it's hand-eye coordination. You got to be fast. Serving the tea blindfolded, you have to be able to visualize and actualize your environment. Remember where people are. I'm buying it, right? But then there's no payoff in that. I think that Senzo, all he was doing here was dealing with the grief of his son's death and the disappointment that his family line was coming to an end, because he does more beating the shit out of Frank physically than actually training him anything. He has him, he's like, okay, go sit and meditate. And then he's got his cane or that bamboo stick, and he's beating the shit out of him, hitting him in the side, hitting him like in the legs, in the head. He ties him up, basically draws and quarters him. To people who have not seen this movie in a while, it is undoubtedly cruel, and there is no method to his teaching that pays off at the end.
Well, of course there is, because he wins, because you have to be able to meditate through the pain in order to truly be ready for the Kumite. Like, that's the whole point. And come on, it's badass. Like, when he's all stretched out like that, like, he looks awesome. And then he stands up and he breaks the rope. It's ridiculous, but it's amazing. And like, the 8-year-old in me that loved Kung Fu and like all martial arts when I was 8 thought it was badass. And I'm 39-year-old and I love ninja shit. And I still was like, okay, Jean-Claude Van Damme, like, I see you. Like, I see your splits. They're awesome.
I think this is just testament to like what a donkey dick Frank Dux is, because you've got a real martial artist like Van Damme, a guy who is trained in Shotokan and kickboxing. He's right there. You could be like, hey, how do you train? Let's just film that. No. Frank Dux is like, no, this is what I did. I got tied up to like fucking trees and beat with bamboo sticks. And I don't understand how Van Damme doesn't just go like, hey, this is bullshit. Like, why don't you just make a movie where I show you my actual training regimen? Look at that guy. Look at his muscle tone. Look at his flexibility, his dexterity. You know he trains. Why don't we just see how he trains?
Yeah.
Why they got to fake it?
But if you remember, Van Damme famously was the original Predator from the Arnold Schwarzenegger classic. And he refused.
And he wanted to kickbox.
Yes, he wouldn't take direction, and he insisted on doing kickboxing. So maybe that lesson was lost somewhere between these two films.
But Frank Dux was just creeping around the set being like, no. That is not what I did. I served tea like this. And then he tried to punch me and I stopped it.
Yeah.
After arriving in Hong Kong, Dux befriends American fighter Ray Jackson and their guide, Victor Lin. When they arrive at the Kumite arena, the officials are skeptical, but eventually accept them after Dux proves his connection to the Tanaka clan by performing the Dim Mak death touch. On the first day of the tournament, Dux earns the enmity of the ruthless Kumite champion Chong Li after breaking his record for the fastest knockout.
So as soon as they start sharing the history of the Kumite and all the rules, and it's like this big opening ceremony, I was smiling because I knew that you, Big D, were happy somewhere watching this movie, because they give all their little brief FAQs, they give the rules, the reason why this is important. And a lesser movie would have done this in some voiceover in the exposition, right? It would have been in 1600, right? And it would have been font on the screen.
Gong.
But instead, we get it in this awesome setting because the Kumite itself looks badass. That arena looks really cool. It looks like it's lived in and could actually be useful and used, and it's nothing crazy. And they give us, from beginning to end exactly what this thing's going to be. I mean, I know you had to be happy. We all were aware and on the same page about what the rules are.
And understanding the rules, I've got to say the ref needs to be replaced, because here are the ways they say you can lose a fight. You can get knocked out, you can get thrown off the mat, or you can surrender by saying mate. Multiple fighters in this tournament were fucking unconscious. The ref just sat there and waited until they were dead or maimed or had bones sticking out of their bodies. And all he did was he would just shake his head disapprovingly at Chong Li. How could you do this, Chong Li?
Yeah, they give us the three: off the mat, knocked out, or you say mate. What about being dead? Okay, because this obviously has happened before. And I was shocked. I thought that the audience would love it, because Bolo and Chong Li, he's charismatic. He's got the crowd fired up. And when they turn their back on him, I'm like, okay, there's something else going on here. But the ref is useless. The ref does nothing. At the end of the movie, Gene, he's used as a pommel horse. He's used as a prop to get some air and actually do some kicks. So he's he's clueless.
Another connection here that I think is really interesting is, I already mentioned it, but how closely this is interconnected with Mortal Kombat. I think it's pretty cool that we're doing this so close to reviewing Annihilation, although Annihilation is a dumpster fire and we all agree to that. This is a much better film. But you can't help but see the inspiration or the shared vision of both the game, the original movie, and then this movie. And there's a reason for that. Mortal Kombat was heavily inspired by this film. They took the idea of the tournament and all the different types of fighters. And even Frank Dux is actually pointed to as one of the inspirations for Johnny Cage, all the way down to the Jean-Claude Van Damme style splits. Now, I have to be honest, I think Frank Dux is a lot cooler than Johnny. Johnny Cage, I've always found to be a tool. I don't think he's a great character. And Frank, I do think is much better. But I think that, it's pretty neat that there's a connection here. I was waiting for Jean-Claude Van Damme to pull out some aviator sunglasses and get one side of it, knocked out. But I think it's pretty great.
I need to know what part of Frank Dux turns you on more, Ash. Is it when he puts his back to opponent and then kicks over his own shoulder into their face? Or is it when he does that weird high knee walk that looks like a dog wearing shoes for the first time?
I mean, the high knee walk is pretty great. But
it's kind of badass.
It's pretty awesome. But I also like it when he's doing splits on a chair while his friend talks to him and he's so deep into meditation he doesn't hear him.
He finds the tallest building in Hong Kong. It's
This is without a doubt his highest split count. Without a doubt. I mean,
Time Cop was 2, I think.
No, but we did get where we get the two agents come out with those giant tasers. And I immediately had a flashback to Time Cop when he does the split and the tasers go between his legs.
Is Time Cop the one where he does the split on the washer and the dryer?
Yeah, and there's water on the ground.
Yeah, there's water on the ground of his apartment as they're coming to kill him.
Okay.
But it was that giant taser. Man, taser technology is advanced.
And speaking of Time Cop, we generally loathe slow motion here at Shat the Movies. But I understand sometimes you're making a movie, you want to get that detailed shot of a very cool technique that can't really be done perfectly at full speed. Fine, I get it. It's movie making. That's okay. My only request, Bloodsport, is that you get the physics right. Because in Bloodsport, we get slap kicks that hit dudes so hard that they fucking flip. But they flip in the wrong direction. We get bones that break opposite the direction of impact. As a kid, I didn't know any better, but I don't understand how adults could be expected to not scratch their heads at what they're seeing on screen.
But Gene, that's not the only thing that had me scratching my head. When we get to the actual Kumite and they're getting introduced, and now there's another layer. You have to not only just show up with your invite, you have to prove that you're worthy of being there. And we get introduced to the dim mock, which is like this secret technique. It's about pressure points and meridians. It's meant to like incapacitate, or you could actually kill some of your opponents. And the way they're going to demonstrate this is they're going to be like, okay, break a brick. And if you haven't seen it, not the top brick, not the middle brick, the brick way at the bottom. So you have to be able to transfer your energy. Now, we haven't gotten any deep, in-depth backstory, maybe where he's being taught about using this power with ultimate respect and practicing like on trees or hitting walls and like making shelves fall off inside, something like that. So when he does this death touch, I'm like, holy shit, is this thing real? So I did some research, and there was a mythology behind this where you teach this touch of death. And it turns out in the end that it's probably just a case of like what happened to the Bills player recently, Damar Hamlin, where if you hit your heart at just the right time in between beats, you could kill somebody almost instantaneously. So I'm imagining in my head, back through the time of people fighting, these tournaments, there had to have been a time that somebody just punched somebody else directly in the chest, died instantly, and immediately a legend was born. And they're like, how did you do that? Oh, that was the dim mock. Holy shit, I swear I saw that dude. He killed somebody. This power, if he could actually do that, there would be nobody on the planet who could stop him. He could just be like, I'm going to punch you like in the skin and I'm going to rupture your kidney. If he could direct his force and focus his power, he would be the deadliest man on the planet.
But it's like Chong Li said, very good, but brick not hit back.
Right, but the brick is shattered. The brick's not going to hit back. If you punch in the side of the head, okay, every punch I would focus my energy. Like a shape charge, just give everybody an aneurysm. The fights would never go more than 2 minutes.
Or how about just like general physics and the fact that you're putting so much pressure on the top brick that the bottom one would like break from all the other weight naturally.
No, it goes through.
Like,
it's like transfer of energy. It's like the Force.
Yeah, I thought this was one of the dumbest parts of the movie. In Kill Bill, I can't help but think of Kill Bill with something like this, right? And so in Kill Bill, you've got the 5-point palm exploding heart move that they talk about the whole movie. And then at the end, Uma Thurman does it. And as ridiculous as that move is, like Uma Thurman looks like really fucking cool when she does it. And then Bill gets up and he takes his 3 steps and he drops dead and it's all dramatic. Like that I can deal with, but Jean-Claude Van Damme hitting one brick on top of all the other bricks it doesn't play as good as I think they wanted to play.
Have either of you seen Frank Dux do this in real life?
Shut up.
No.
There's no video of this.
No, yeah. Oh, there is. Yeah, there is. Absolutely. So
Shut up.
The dim mock brick trick is so much dumber when you see Frank Dux do it, because in Bloodsport, it's a stack of bricks on a flat surface, completely covered on the bottom, right? In real life, what Frank Dux would do is he would have nothing supporting the middle of the bottom bricks. Like you were saying, Ash, the energy all goes down and then it's bridging between 2 bricks below it. So of course, that's where it's going to break. It's the fucking dumbest thing. And he would do it on the news. Like there's clips of him doing like on the TV news, and the newscasters would all just be like, oh, wow. Like kind of like they're playing along, but they're totally laughing at the guy. And he's dead serious.
Did it explode like that block of ice in the beginning?
No, it just breaks.
It was like, yeah! We get the slow-mo zoom in on the people's faces.
It would leave no bruising on the skin, and they could die immediately or maybe days after.
Oh, man.
Giving yourself a pretty big window for the fatality.
I mean, eventually, statistically, you're gonna get lucky. Somebody's gonna like just drop dead or get in a car
27
accident.
years later, die.
I timed it perfectly.
Plus or minus 35 years.
Yeah.
Dux becomes involved with American journalist Janice Kent, who is investigating the Kumite. Although Dux refuses to help her, she sneaks into the arena by agreeing to a date with another spectator. On the second day, Jackson is matched against Chong Li. Although Jackson comes close to defeating Lee, he wastes time gloating, allowing Lee to recover and brutally beat him. Dux visits Jackson in the hospital and vows to avenge him. After witnessing the brutality of the tournament, Janice argues with Dux and tries to convince him not to return. Dux tells her that he has to win in order to become the best he can be.
So Adam from Texas said that we had to give the soundtrack a listen in this because there's great workout songs. Well, guys, I got to tell you, I'm normally not a fan of a lot of these movie, big moment songs, especially something like Karate Kid, that, you're the best around, like not into it. But this one, it has a bit of a banger in the middle of this movie. I mean, I want you to listen to these lyrics just from one little tiny verse. Mind and body are a perfect team. Now's my chance to live my dream. I'm taking hold of every moment. Give strength by the breath of life. Mm-hmm. I'm going to stake my claim. I fight to survive. Kumite, kumite, kumite. Like, y'all, it's badass. And it got me like super jacked up for the fights by the second verse, because I watched this with Finn for the most part. I fast forwarded through a couple of scenes, but for the most part, my 7-year-old and I watched this. And by like the second verse, we were singing around, especially screaming that I fight to survive. Like, you can't help yourself.
I admittedly was up in bed hours after watching this movie. It was like 1 a.m. Sarah's asleep, and I'm just quietly chanting, Kumite, Kumite. And she woke up. She's like, shut the fuck up. But there's one part of the lyrics that's always bothered me, and it's the fight to survive. Sounds great. You're right, Ash. But none of these guys is fighting to survive. Like, each person in this tournament had to travel to Hong Kong, book a hotel, find the arena, get their invitation accepted by the Black Dragon. It should be like, fight to, I guess, prove something to myself.
No, you're so crazy. Jackson's fighting for his life. He's fighting to survive.
He didn't have to be there.
Oh, he did, Gene. He did. It's every man has to put themselves through. This isn't about pay-per-view or clicks or eyeballs on the fight or respect. This is about you seeing what makes you you. And I normally would never do this. And I don't care if we get like a copyright strike. I got to play at least 45 seconds of this.
Do it.
I hold Rocky IV's soundtrack as my pinnacle, I think, of the training montage, the 80s, like on point lyrics and music. This song, people, is epic. Very Miami Vice. You got that little...
Kind of had a New Order opening on that drum.
My body's ready, my heart's on fire. Gonna push over the wire. Perfect timing, tight as a drum. You find the balance already won. I'm taking hold of every moment. Giving strength by the breath of life. I'm gonna stake my claim. I fight to survive.
Everybody get ready. Everybody get ready. Kumite, 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 kumite. It keeps going. Kumite, kumite, kumite. Oof, that's so good.
So good.
You think that's better than No Easy Way Out, though?
Man, I think they're on par. I think they're really close to each other. They're really, really close. But Gene, what this movie's remembered for, and what we're going to have to talk about at this point, is the fighting, because I enjoyed the fighting scenes. I think they're really good. And you're our martial arts expert. You're more trained than any of us here on fighting techniques and in general hand-to-hand combat styles. You live in a martial arts household. I expect to sometimes come over and find swords on your walls and different kind of like silk pajamas, you walking around and bonsai trees and offering tea to all of your guests.
The last part is true.
It opens up and we get to see, like we've talked about, all the different styles. And my first question here is, when we meet Ricardo Moreras, he is the guy up in the tree, African-American guy, looks like he's probably from some village. He's cracking coconuts. And when we see him fight, he takes it a step further. He does what is called the monkey style. And he's hopping around on all four. Is there any advantage to this style, Gene?
No. The second I saw him chopping the coconut in the tree, as Ash said, I immediately saw the writing on the wall. I was like, something is going to go horribly wrong for this guy. But there's no advantage to hopping around on all fours, because what it does is it puts your head near legs that can kick or stomp your head. If he was doing grappling and he was protecting his head, maybe going in feet first, like that might kind of work a little bit. But no, you should never go head first and hop around. That's just bad news bears.
And anyone who's seen the new horror film with that doll, Megan, that's the way Megan runs on all four through the forest. That's the way she runs. But Gene, here's my other question. When we're introduced to the arena and the mat, I was shocked at how narrow the mat was. It was probably 15, 20 feet wide. When you face your opponent, you're almost at the very edge. I'm thinking of Flash Gordon, when Baron and Flash are fighting, that you would want to get your person near the edge. And when we get Frank showing up in his gi, I'm like, this is a huge disadvantage. There's only about 3 other guys with tops on, and the other tops are silk. So his gi to me would look like something that I could grab on, use leverage. Why are people not doing more of a focus on getting them off the mat and using leverage, or just letting a guy run by you and Zorro him, bullfight, get him to run himself off the mat?
I mean, suddenly what you're saying, Big D, explains why in the final fight, in the championship fight, they take their tops off.
Makes sense.
They actually go down to shorts for that one. They're not even fucking around with pants. But yeah. Jackson had the right idea, because if you watch one of the fight montages, you could see he's just fucking tossing a dude right off the mat. That's got to be the easiest way to win, which is why I was surprised there were no wrestlers in this movie. No Sambo guys. I think that was a huge missed opportunity. Everybody was a striker, but the Black Dragon wants what the Black Dragon wants.
So now that we've talked about the fighting style of Frank and the rest of the guys, I do have to talk about Van Damme. You want to embrace him. He's goofy. He doesn't come across as some cocky, arrogant guy, which he is the antithesis, I think, to Steven Seagal. He looks like he's technically proficient. He is in great shape. And he seems to be just like an all-around good guy, But one of the things I have to question here is his choice of style. And we've mentioned this in most of his movies. And you would think that he's going to try to dress like a tough guy like Jackson, who's got like his Harley shirt and his jeans. But he dresses like some like 80s guy going to like the country club. It's all preppy. It's 2 sizes too large. He's got like assorted Izod polos. He's got a bunch of button downs that he wears that are so big, he's got to cuff the sleeves like Patrick Swayze, and he folds them up really thick, like 4 or 5 inches thick. They look like a blouse on him. He's got his jeans on with no belt. He's got this comb over where he looks like a nerd. And I thought maybe this is just the role. This is Frank trying to lull the competition, into thinking a false sense of security that he is going to be this just weak, what are you doing here, American? And then he busts out his shirt and they're like, oh, he's jacked. Oh, he can fight. But no, this is Van Damme. This is his Belgian everyday life. He looks ridiculous. Am I the only one, or Ash, you're going to shockingly tell me that you think he's attractive?
I mean, do I think he's attractive? I think his face is bulgy and I think he's got a weird haircut, but like he is like ripped, right? Like the dude is in fantastic shape. Like they give us that like very intentional ass shot after he's had sex with what's her name?
Janice.
Janice. He looks like the statue of David. Like he's insanely built.
Great shape.
Are we getting a shift in the taste of Ash? Are you moving toward the more muscular build?
Ew. No. No.
Okay.
I'm just saying objectively, like he's like incredibly fit, right? And I think the problem is I don't think it's his clothes here. I think it's his hair. Like his hair is so lame, the way that it's cut and the way that it's styled. He like brushes it to the side. He's like that kid in class whose mom does his hair for yearbook picture day. So he just looks like an absolute idiot. It's so uncool. And I thought the clothes, I mean, whatever, they were fine. That gold jacket he's wearing when he's randomly running over fishing boats, like that was a pretty great jacket.
But Gene, if we think back to young Frank, this is a hairdo young Frank would have.
Yes.
Is this a regulation cut for an Army officer?
Oh, I don't see why not. I mean, I don't know why anybody would want to wear that. Nobody's going to respect you. But yeah, I think it's regulation. I'd have to go back and look at it. I didn't even think of it. And then maybe he had been, I don't know. I think it would pass.
As you mentioned that gold sport coat, I know when I'm running from cops in dingy Hong Kong where everything is like gray, that the golden sport coat is my jacket of choice. It really blends in. But again, we have to recognize that this Frank Dux on screen is much, much better than the real Frank Dux. Because if you look at photos of the real Frank Dux in his street clothes, he had like an 80s mustache. He really loved to wear leather dusters with like a belt tied around the waist, acid wash jeans. He would wear those fucking keyboard ties with like black dress shirts. Van Damme looks fantastic in comparison.
Yeah, the real Frank seems much douchier.
And as a professional journalist, I have to bring up another point with this movie that really bothered me. I've been offended by loads of 80s and 90s movies depiction of reporters. They're always kind of slimy or no good. Bloodsport goes beyond offensive. We're in straight appalling territory. Not only does Janice fulfill the trope of woman journalists who fucks the athlete to get the story, which is, please, let's just put that one to bed. But she openly uses a tape recorder while undercover at the Kumite. Like, she sneaks in and then busts out a fucking tape recorder, which is a dead giveaway. Then, once she witnesses this brutal tournament that she's been dying to see, what does she do? She judges it. She says it's too brutal, and then she tries to stop Frank from competing.
Yeah, she's got to remain impartial, Gene. You
do the story.
You can't get involved in the story. You start banging your source, you lose all credibility.
All integrity.
Honor your father.
Yeah, but how do we not talk about Frank's underwear? Whew.
Those red Speedos.
Those things were like, in like the 80s and 90s, the women's bathing suits had that really high leg cut.
Mm-hmm.
His shit was like super high. I was seeing what I was digging what he was laying down.
Well, they were silky too.
They were.
Like, they weren't just red, they were red silky pants.
I mean, I don't know what we're doing with boxer briefs. The more and more I think about it, the more they make no sense.
Do you think Van Damme's good in bed? Do you think he busts out the splits and any kind of technique? No. And he's got to have great cardio. He's got to be a stamina guy.
No.
Big D, as I mentioned, I've been reading Come As You Are, and so I don't believe in good in bed anymore.
No, but I feel like he would be a very sensual lover. He would be very giving.
I don't think so at all. I think he'd be immensely selfish and like very like rough.
And some people are into that.
Yeah, I guess.
Some people named Big D.
Justice for Van Damme.
Helmer and Rollins arrive in Hong Kong and contact local police inspector Chen. They begin asking around for Dux and track him down to his hotel. A chase through the downtown ensues, but Dux evades them as they fall into a canal. When Dux arrives at the Kumite, Helmer and Rollins are waiting for him, along with Chen and 4 of his officers. Dux defeats them, but he agrees to return with Helmer and Rollins after the tournament.
All right, so like, let me get this straight here, because this is this whole subplot that I felt like was like completely unnecessary and did not need to exist at all. So they're sending these 2 inspectors all the way to Hong Kong. Like, what's the bill on that, right? Like, just the flights alone. And is it necessary? I know that they need to find him. I know he's gone AWOL, yada, yada, yada. But like, is it that serious that they need him like now? Because like, they know he's going to come back. Like, he lives in the United States. And they know that they're going to get to arrest him if he comes back. So it feels insanely stupid to spend this kind of cash. Because what are they doing? They're hanging out. They're eating eel on a pier at a fancy restaurant. They're threatening to tase him in a hotel lobby. Like, for me, it's both a total waste of federal dollars and it's a total waste of Forrest Whitaker, who I usually love, who's completely useless here.
Okay, and I don't want either of you to bring up the fact that both of these actors happen to be African American. Just like in Judgment Night, where I said, how the hell did Cuba Gooding Jr. won an Oscar? Forrest Whitaker. How did this guy ever win an Oscar for this performance? It just blows my mind. But I digress.
What did you want him to do? Like a fucking soliloquy in this movie? He's given a taser and told to chase Jean-Claude Van Damme through Hong Kong.
I'm just saying, if you were on the set, do you think he said, man, one day that Forrest Whitaker, yeah, he's gonna do it.
I don't know. The way he fell out of that boat.
Oh, backwards with like the arm, like,
whoa,
zoinks. No, but Ash, to answer your question, I just don't get it. I agree. Why is the Army so eager to get you back? They usually don't care. They're going to get you. You're going to get pulled over somewhere. They're going to run your tags. They're going to run your license. They're going to find it. And, Helmer and Rawlings, they go, oh, the government's got millions invested in your training. Yeah, most of them, you have that millions invested, from the equipment to the years to the time. I thought maybe he was some like experimental pilot, or maybe he was ready to go on some secret mission, and that's why they were so hell-bent on stopping him from going. Like, you can't get hurt. You're going to fly that brand new stealth fighter we have. Something like that. But they never give us that, because 99% of the time, they just don't care, and they'll pick you up when they pick you up.
I thought the angle was going to be, we don't want an Army officer killing a guy on Chinese soil. Like, that would be a diplomatic issue. Then they're like, no, we just don't want you to get hurt.
Yeah.
The fuck? And I don't mean to rewrite the movie, but like Ash said, this side plot doesn't add anything to the film. It's wasted time and it's goofy. Like, imagine if we'd gotten to follow an additional fighter, right, in the Kumite, learn more about one of them specifically, or maybe spend 5 minutes learning how Shingo died. They never address it. He's just dead.
No, or training on the death punch. There's a lot of things we could have done with that time. But obviously, it was the real Frank Dux being like, we must include this into the movie when the Federals were chasing me.
He's not French.
Belgian, French, all the same.
He's not Belgian.
They all sound the same. Frank is Belgian. They immigrated to the U.S., but he's
to grow vines. Not to work in a vineyard, but to grow vines.
Like fish.
Yeah, in the hatchery.
So then I took top off a garbage can and I hit the tasers back into the Hong Kong cops. He fucking attacked 4 cops in Hong Kong. And they're just like, that Frank.
Yeah, did you also, I felt like there was some plot that we didn't get about that police chief.
Chen?
Who almost.
Yeah, why is he helping?
I think it's because he thinks a foreigner is going to become the first winner. I thought there was something about, he doesn't get involved until he keeps advancing in the tournament. So I thought, hey, I'm going to keep that round eye from winning our tournament. And that's why he got involved.
Before anybody gets mad at Big D, it's a term used in the film. So that's our policy now. We can use any term used in the film.
Any term.
On the final day, Chong Li kills his semifinal opponent, much to the consternation of the crowd. Fearing defeat in the final against Frank Dux, Li conceals a salt pill in his waistband before the bout. When Dux gains the upper hand, Li blinds him by crushing the pill and throwing it into Dux' face. Dux falls back on his training from Tanaka, who taught him to fight blindfolded, overcoming the handicap and defeating Li. The next day, Frank bids farewell to Kent and Jackson before returning to the United States with Helmer and Rollins. I know we're supposed to get jazzed when we see Frank in his semifinal fight because they built him up with one of the other fighters who gets a little bit more screen time than the rest, which is Paco. Paco's the Muay Thai guy, and it's the best fight in the movie. It's way better than the final fight. But anyone who's done a Muay Thai tournament or watched one can tell you that fighting in a tournament is different from fighting a single bout. Because in a single bout, like we'd see like in Rocky, right? You train for months, you fight one opponent, you give that fight everything you got, and then you get to rest and recover for several months. In a tournament, your reward for winning is you just get to fight again. So we see Frank standing there trading mid kicks with a Muay Thai professional. First of all, his ribs would be powdered by that point. But secondly, he's got to know he's got Chong Li next. Why the fuck is he fucking around with this guy?
Yeah, I wish we had seen more injured fighters, like trainers on the side trying to do the Miyagi hand rub on the thigh, trying to get people back in there. I mean, the worst thing that Frank has is a shiner, but otherwise he looks pretty good. He looks like he's ready to go. I kept waiting for that injury that he had to overcome. So I was shocked when we get the secret pill in like his waistline. I think that's possibly the worst place you could have put it when you're fighting and kicking each other in the stomach. That thing would have fallen on the floor. But again, They don't get it. And he throws. Oh, so he grinds up. People, I'm assuming a lot of you haven't seen it. He grinds up this giant, like Altoid-sized pill. This wasn't a little pill. And he throws it in his eye. Ref says nothing. It is a giant. It looks like LeBron James clapping his hands before a Cleveland Cavalier game. And Frank immediately starts to, I cannot see. And he starts having not just blurry vision. He's seeing like trails of light. It is like he's tripping out. He's starting to see ghost images. He's starting to hallucinate a bit. And I'm super disappointed that this was a salt pill because I thought this was some kind of like a hallucinogen that he not only blinded him, but he started to trip out. And then I said, oh shit, he's able to meditate now. He's channeling the spirit of Senzo, who said, when you fight with me. I'm like, shit, the dark training is coming full circle. We're going to get a voiceover where Senzo is going to be like, no, let out the power. No, it was the salt pill.
Yeah, no, I have to completely agree. For some reason, I remembered the end of this movie being like the blowfish powder that they use in like Haiti to like turn people into zombies. Like it was some voodoo shit, you know, that like I have like a distinct memory of it coming out in like powdered form and him like,
it does
like dramatically into his face. And it was such a letdown that it was just salt.
But no matter who you ask who's seen this movie, they all remember the hands out and like the sad, like,
yes, he's kicking
and then like
shit
the
that's
dramatic
not there.
music.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, I don't know what the fuck the ref was there for. If you're not going to disqualify a guy for pocket sand, and like Big D said, everyone saw it. Like it's not a secret. Why are they not allowing knives or bats or anything else? If blinding an opponent doesn't stop the fight, more dudes should be poking eyeballs. That works way better than salt pills. And it's very easy to jab someone in the eye with your fingers. Like that's not hard to do. In the UFC, that will stop a fight because it's so incapacitating and so easy to do.
Like Three Stooges, like boink.
Just like rake the eyes or poke the eyes. Yeah. It's absolutely outlawed in the UFC because it will fuck somebody's eyes up. And it's so easy to do. Like you see it all the time. People are trying to find range. They put their hand out. If they got their fingers out, the ref will be like, hey, you do that 2 or 3 more times, you're out of here.
Yeah, but another fucking thing that they did that I found myself disappointed, they hype up, hey, prepare the mat for the finals. I'm like, oh shit, we're going to get some spikes. It's going to be extra narrow. Or I thought they're going to elevate the mat. So you're fighting like where if you fall off, it's some Squid Game shit.
Yeah.
No, it's like slightly elevating the ends, which happens to be the exact mat shape.
It's like a half pipe for skateboarding.
And that's the mat he had been training on. So I'm like, all right, this is going to come full circle. But they just totally dodge and ditch that entire mystical aspect of the film.
Excuse me, he's doing way cooler jump kicks once he's got the ramps to jump off of. He jumps over the fucking ref, like you said. He chest kicks Chong Li big time. It's important.
We can't go without just saying the slow motion. Whether it's Chung Lee doing it or him doing it.
Yeah.
And that really bad fake blood, which looks like Kool-Aid or like some kind of like syrupy drink. It doesn't look like blood.
The hyper-oxygenated blood of a true ninjutsu practitioner. It's bright pink. You know, as pumped as I get every time I watch Frank defeat supervillain Chong Li, the real triumph of the film actually comes later. It's when Frank returns Jackson's bandana to him in the hospital and says, I love you, my friend. It should make me groan. It's cheesy as fuck, but it gets me in the feels every time. I'm not joking, listeners. I'm dead serious about this. I love this friendship between Ray and Frank. And I wouldn't say the movie earned it. I just think that they used something that guys universally relate with. Every guy in the world sees himself either as a Ray or a Frank. And so you're instantly relating to the movie.
And please, anyone who watches this film, if your best friend, the person you love, gets a head injury or is possibly paralyzed, the worst thing you could do is stand over his body, grab the sides of his head, and shake his head and be like, Jackson, and shake his head. I'm like, if Jackson turned out to be paralyzed, I would be pretty convinced that it was because of Frank.
So the film's full of bullshit, but when it wraps up is really when we get like the mother load of crap. We get a written epilogue that says Frank Dux holds 4 world records. And by the way, it also mentions that he's like the heavyweight Kumite champ, which I didn't realize there were weight classes in the Kumite, but apparently yes. He's got fastest knockout at 3.2 seconds. So that's self-explanatory. Okay, I understand that. Then we get fastest punch with a knockout, 0.12 seconds. Okay, so we're now understanding that we're measuring punches in seconds. Then you get fastest kick with a knockout, 72 miles per hour. So we're measuring kicks not in seconds. But then we get to the one I cannot abide. The claim is that Frank had 56 consecutive knockouts in a tournament. Think about that. This man says that he fought 56 fights in a tournament and knocked out every single fighter that he faced. Now, think about this. It's a single elimination tournament, right? That means he fought 56 rounds. And if you break that down between fighters, that means there had to be 74 quadrillion fighters in the tournament.
I think there's some like Chris Kyle, American Sniper bullshit biography, or this is like some Steven Seagal working for the CIA shit.
The tournament would still be going on right now.
I mean, there had to have been one day that he got hurt, or one day that somebody just tagged him, he fell out of the ring. You're not going to go undefeated.
Yeah, one dude who says mate.
That's it. No,
that's it.
No, he knocked everybody out.
No.
I mean, this is the same guy, though, who claims that the reason he's such a great fighter is because he was handicapped as a child and had to learn to walk with braces. And he would like walk one step per day and then eventually learn to kick and then eventually learn to run. And I mean, the guy's fucking insane.
It explains young Frank. Now it all comes around full circle.
Yeah.
Well, Big D, Ash, now is the time in the podcast where we give our Shat score for Bloodsport. The Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is waking up to Van Damme, pulling up his maroon bikini briefs and hopping back into bed for a little cuddle sesh. 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a film. It is entering a full contact martial arts tournament in a skirt. Big D, we'll start with you. What is your wipe score for Bloodsport?
Now, Bloodsport, nobody is going to confuse this or say that's anything close to a masterpiece, but it's fun. It's a fun action movie. It's fun from the martial arts. It's fun from the performances, even though I wouldn't say the acting is great, but the characters are charismatic. They're memorable. Chong Li is memorable. I mean, they still apparently have a friendship to this day when you see the two of them together as old dudes. Van Damme still looks like he could kick ass. I think, Bolo
looks okay.
He's struggling a bit. He seems a bit older.
Well, he was fucking huge.
Yeah, he was huge. I think this is like a martial arts version of Roadhouse. It's ridiculous. The action is cheesy, but I enjoyed it. I really did, and I did not expect to. I think this is a 1.5 white movie.
Yeah, I mean, here's the deal. I love this movie. I think it's fun. It's super silly, but it's got fun fight scenes. It's got Jean-Claude Van Damme at his young best self, complete with his beautifully perfect ass. It is a late 80s movie that just works, and I was here for every second of it. The 90 minutes flew by. It felt like I was watching a 20-minute film. I would watch it again in a heartbeat, and I am going to come in with an exactly similar score to yours, Big D, and say it's 1.5 wipes.
I'm going to have to make it unanimous, noting that the real Frank Dux is absolutely full of shit. His story made for a really entertaining movie. It's the role Van Damme was born to play. And as bad as the martial arts are in this movie, the fights are stupid fun to watch. You can drop in during any scene in this movie and tell your friends, oh, watch this. This shit's hilarious. But with zero cynicism. It's just a movie you've got to watch to get. So 1.5 wipes for me as well.
So, Gene, with a nice even 1.5 across the board, that now ties this in the 96 spot. Now, keep in mind, people, we're closing in here, I think, on like 340 movies. So this is in the top third of films. It ties it with The Thing, Scrooge, Spaceballs, Friday the 13th, Galaxy Quest, UHF, Scarface, Magnolia, Stand By Me, The Naked Gun, 3 O'Clock High, Rocky Horror Picture Show, and Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Yeah.
I feel like that works.
Agree. Like if any of those were on TV, I wouldn't turn it off.
But this one more than the others.
Yeah, this one's fun. This one is fun.
All right, Adam, I think the score is fair, and I hope you agree. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gene, in this coming-of-age tragedy, Tim is leading a go-nowhere existence, spending his days smoking pot and hanging out with his best friend, Drug Delaney. But Tim's days of getting high are jettisoned after a brush with the law convinces his blue-collar dad to send him to a Connecticut prep school. The one saving grace of the new school is Jane, a fellow student Tim falls for immediately. Commissioned by Mark S., came out in the very end of 1999, so it's on the edge of our current limit. And I have not seen this film, did not know anything about it until Mark S. wrote in and said, can you do it? And it looks like it'll be interesting, especially considering what's happened in the news lately.
Well, thank you, Mark, for that upcoming commission. Thank you, Adam, for commissioning Bloodsport. And thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, just go to the website, shatpod.com, and use the SpeakPipe feature. You can support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Ash and Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next time for the following movie.
Timothy Dunphy has a broken home, a three-legged dog.
Get that mangy flea bag out of this house!
And 2 strikes against him.
You hit a parked cop car.
Oh.
But he's about to get a future, whether he likes it or not.
What's a prep school?
It's to prepare you for not getting your neck broke by me.
No smoking, no drinking, no drugs. No swearing, no sex.
It's beautiful. Just what I always wanted.
Yeah, I got it at the dentist.
From the Farrelly brothers, the guys who made There's Something About Mary, comes something that will really make your hair stand on end.
Making out is like Chinese dinner. It ain't over until you both get your cookies. So, remember I said that.
Outside Providence.
Enmity. Isn't it enmity?
Enmity. Mm-hmm.
Not enmity. Enmity. Yeah.